want to introduce our presenter here, Melissa Landolt. She's a, excuse me, a certified residential appraiser and owner of Landolt Appraisals. She's been an appraiser since 2011 and a business owner since 2017. And she has a plethora of experience and knowledge, and she'll be going through a couple different various topics of questions that were already presented, and then we will definitely open up for more questions um, as they arise, and feel free to put them in the chat as they come to mind. Okay, so welcome, Melissa. Appreciate your time,
Thank
and
you. Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm excited to be with you all this morning. So thank you for your time. I know everyone's busy. I'm going to kind of break down today's session in three different groups. So we'll kind of group questions and everything together that way. Everything in the chat, if that's okay, I'll cover kind of at the end, if that's fine with everybody else. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss is like the appraisal industry altogether. So I know someone had asked, are there, what are some of the biggest changes? So back in 2010, UAD was introduced. So that's a set of guidelines and that we have to follow when putting appraisal reports together for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It's kind of a data set of quality ratings, condition ratings. It's just kind of meant to have more, with all the appraisers kind of more defined definitions of some of those things instead of just average, above average. This is just a little more specific. And there's a set of rules and guidelines for quality that range from a Q1 rating down to a Q5, and then a condition rating Q1, Q5. So we've had to navigate that, which went relatively smoothly. So if you get some of your appraisals back or have ever looked at an appraisal for a lender, you'll see some of those guidelines. So someone had also, has also asked about like VA FHA. I'm not certified FHA appraiser, so I would totally recommend calling an FHA appraiser for any questions. But the one question someone has was the biggest difference between conventional and FHA. FHA really focuses on safety concerns. So peeling paint, handrails, railings around, decks or any open areas open to below that, they require those railings. They also have regulations on if properties have well and septic, there's distance regulations there that need to be met. I wanted to kind of go over like even some like misconceptions too, as far as I get a lot of people that say, well, an appraiser is going to determine one value, but a real estate agent is going to, come up with a different value. I hear that a lot, and I say, well, we as appraisers, we have to follow a set of guidelines through Fannie and Freddie Mac if it's going to be an appraisal for a lender. For most loans. So while the appraisal might look a little different than like a comparative market analysis, it's still market value. So appraisers are pulling comparable sales, analyzing data, and coming up with that market value just like real estate agents are. So those are quite similar. I have another question that was presented previously to me was that have I been seeing appraisals come in lower? I personally have not. The market has been, increasing pretty significantly over the last few years. Your winter months slow down a little bit as far as how rapidly it's increasing. But I have noticed, I have not noticed appraised values coming in lower than sale prices for purchase transactions. So hope that helps answer that question. And we analyze market conditions based on median sale prices. So we take, the certain market that, houses that we are appraising, and we determine that median sale price, and we look at the trends over, 24-month period of time. So that's how we can kind of, prove that market values are increasing. I'll open it up to any questions so far, because I don't want to ramble and then not get a chance if someone wants to jump in with anything I just talked about. Okay.
So you go back 24 months, or is it 12? Sorry, my phone cut out.
Yep, that's okay. So when I'm analyzing market trends, so how what's happening over the course of either 12 months, I go back 24 months, and then I analyze, okay, so what's it doing from January to June, going back 2023, and then what's it doing from July to December, and create those median sale prices so that I can see, okay, if every 6 months for the last 2 years, I can see that trend and create determine a percentage of what the market is doing, whether it's going up or down. Does that make sense?
Is it standard?
Perfect.
Is
Like
it
that to go back standard to go back 24, or is that something you just do?
when determining
So just I just
market trends? When determining market trends, it is something that actually just recently too, lenders are preferring you to go back 24 months to determine those differences. But within the appraisal report, obviously we're going to choose comparables that have sold within the last 12 months, or sooner. Lenders will allow us to use comparables that sold beyond 12 months. But then obviously we have to do our due diligence and, apply appropriate market conditions adjustment if it's warranted. Does that make everyone, any other questions, or is that? Okay, and then the next big thing is talking about determining square footage, what counts as finished area, the difference in gross living area, finished basement area. So we follow a set of standards called ANSI. So it's the American National Standards Institute, and it's a way for appraisers to learn how to measure a home. So we go through, that is required now to have that training and follow ANSI standards when we're determining square footage and finished area. So gross living area in an appraisal report is anything above grade. So your bi-levels, your tri-levels, your quads, even if it's half or partially below grade, it has to be considered finished basement area, cannot be considered gross living area. So gross living area is all 100% above grade on all 4 sides of the finished area. Then finished living area can be combined with above grade and below grade. So when you hear people talk about finished living area, that's kind of separate from how we or different than how we have to report it within the appraisal. So finished living area is anything finished: floors, windows, ceiling. It's got ceiling, walls, flooring, heat. That's finished area, whether it's above grade or below grade. Gross living area is above grade. Finished basement area is anything partially or completely below grade. Someone had asked regarding the how you determine with square footage with a sloped ceiling. So you got your Cape Cods where the ceiling line kind of comes down pretty low. ANSI requires the ceiling height to have at least 50% of the room has to be 7 feet tall or higher. If then, so like the center of a room will have 7 feet, and then if the slope starts down, we only take 5 feet on that slope or higher to measure and include in gross living area. So even though it's finished from 5 feet down, it cannot be counted as gross living area on the appraisal report. Does that make sense? And then what counts as a bedroom? I know some people had asked. So Fannie and Freddie don't have any requirements on a closet, right? So it's up to the appraiser to determine if a bedroom is a bedroom based on kind of what's considered typical. It is considered typical for your newer homes to have a closet in it. But your older farmhouses may not, right? So if it's pretty typical to not see a closet, but still utilize it as a bedroom and it's large enough to accommodate a bed, then we can call it a bedroom. Freddie Mac do have regulations on a bedroom that needs to have a window. So, in that report, again, it needs to have a window and it needs to have that's that ceiling height rule again. So it has to have at least 50% of the ceiling height at that 7 feet or more. And it has to be at least 70 square feet in total size. So again, it needs to be large enough to accommodate, that furniture. So let's see. So there's more information. So if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me on, if there's any hesitation on gross living area. There is a set that ANSI standardized measure index that is available online. So if you look up the ANSI Z765-2021, you'll be able to get maybe some of your questions answered as well. So again, that's Z765-2021, and that's ANSI, the ANSI regulations. Gross living area also, I should add, is based on exterior measurements for single family homes that are not condominiums. Condos are interior measurements. So when we measure, we count everything we measure the exterior of all that finished area that has that ceiling height of 5 feet or higher. We're not going to crawl up on roofs when we measure Cape Cods. So what we do is when we're on the second floor of some of those sloped ceilings, we'll find that 5-foot ceiling height, and we'll take interior measurements for that width on those sloped ceilings and be able to determine the width based on that 5 feet. If the height is over 5 feet, we can just add on. I typically measure the gap between the interior wall and the window and add that into my measurement when I'm on the interior. So it still reflects exterior measurements. We measure it from the interior on the second floor. Let's see. So going into the basement then, for bedroom count, finished basement area, you'll need, so same as above grade with a bedroom. It has to be finished, has to have a heat source. And then to be considered a bedroom in the basement, it has to have an egress window. That egress window, when I looked up for Wisconsin state regulations, it has to be 20 inches wide by 24 inches tall. And it can't be any higher off the floor. So the base of the window can't be higher than 44 inches from the floor. So, and so that was pulled from contractor records. And I think that covers everything on my end. Does anyone else have questions before I kind of move on from square footage, bedroom, egress window?
The ANSI website you mentioned, it's ANSI, ANSIZ. What's the rest of it?
Yep. ANSI, then it's Z765 2021.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Styles too, I'll briefly kind of go over that. There was a question on Cape Cod's 1.5 versus 2-story, and a question on style. Another change that was made back in the 2010 UAD regulation was we could no longer call a house a 1.5 story or a 2-story. We have to give it a name. So, your 1.5 story pitched ceilings with or without dormers, typically built in the 40s to 80s, 90s, that we consider Cape Cod. 2-story is, your pretty traditional or colonial style. And then any of your taller roof pitches, little more exterior quality architecture, those we kind of classify contemporary. So that's kind of up to each appraiser. Just like even like real estate agents, whatever is considered typical and what you would hear buyers talk about and understand too. So we're not going to go around calling, properties, oh, it's a salt box. Like that's probably more common down south. So we kind of go according to like what people consider typical for those names. So, okay. Any other questions before I move on to comparable sales and adjustments? Okay. So, choosing comparable sales, we're going to.
Can you hear me?
That's okay. I can. Yeah.
Just got a quick question before we get off that topic. So if we've got a walkout basement and there's a bedroom down there, but does not have an egress. So is that then not considered a bedroom?
Correct. If there's no egress window within that enclosed space, you cannot call it a bedroom. It doesn't mean that it doesn't add value though, right? So if it's still finished area, you can still count it as finished area. I typically will use, the terminology like an office. Some people may refer to it as like a den, but I feel like office area or bonus room is maybe more of a common term.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure because 2 years ago I had a situation like that and the room was actually considered a bedroom because it was a walkout. But I'm coming back up to that again. So something may have changed.
So is the room, do you have to, so explain the layout a little more to me, because also bedrooms can't be like a walk-through room. So what else is finished around there? Like, is there like a finished rec room and then off of that is a finished bedroom with patio doors to the exterior?
So it's a bedroom with no window. You've got a little hallway, a full bathroom, a second room with a window. Then there is a rec area with patio doors in ginormous egress windows.
Okay, so is sectioned off like there's a finished hallway that leads to it?
Yes.
Okay, so if there's a full door, then that will allow you to walk out. Yeah, I guess I would have to see it.
Basically, you have a staircase on one side, so there's your one exit. Then on the opposite end of the hallway, you have the rec room with more egress windows and a patio door.
Okay, so so you walk down the stairs and you have like a rec room and like your egress windows on one side. Then there's a hallway that leads to this bedroom with the door.
Go down the stairs, then you've got 2 bedrooms, bathroom, and then the rec room at the end of the hall. which the hall's only 5 feet long.
Okay. In the bedrooms, like enclosed, like it has a door and it has,
Yes.
okay. That I would consider a bedroom because of that door, but you just have to make sure you like that it is enclosed. There's a door that kind of sections it off for privacy. So if something doesn't have a door, it's not counted as a bedroom either, in my opinion. But if there's other finished rooms that you can get to, like you said, that hallway and that bedroom separate with that door, that I would call that a bedroom then. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Exact. Yeah.
Could I just weigh in on that? It happened to be my son's home and we were selling it. And when we purchased it, it was marketed one way with the same scenario as the woman who's just talking about. There was 2 bedrooms down in the walkout lower, one with a window in it and one without, but a closet and a full, closed out door looked like a bedroom, but just didn't have the window because it was on the side of the home where the rest was on the back where all the egress windows were. I called the city of Green Bay because that's where it was. And I think it was the city inspector that I spoke with, building inspector. And he said, and I described that to him, you walk out into the family room, there's the stairs that go up to the first floor. And then beyond that, there's the rest of the family room with the walkout patio door. And he said, because of the 2 exits, you could call it that because they could exit out either one of those locations in case of a fire. And he said, absolutely, you can count that as the 4th bedroom. So
per Fannie and Freddie requirements, though, we're supposed to follow that ANSI standards. And so us as appraisers would not. So they require that egress, that they need to be able to get out, right? So either that door or that. So if someone's sleeping inside that room, they have to exit the room, right, to get out, either an egress window or walkout.
Yes, they'd run up the steps or go to the patio.
Yep. So again, I just wouldn't be able to call it a bedroom, right? But it doesn't mean that I couldn't apply value in that property because that room exists and it's heated, finished. Yep.
Yes.
So on our end, we have to follow that.
Yeah. And this, I think, was more from a marketing standpoint.
Okay. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So,
and then there's a difference there, right? Like,
exactly.
So, you can market it as that. And then, if it's subject to financing and an appraisal, it'll just show a little discrepancy there. But again, it will still, that room will still add a similar value, right?
Right. Got it.
So, yeah. Perfect. Okay. And then, so for selecting comparables, we really stay focused on sticking with the same style house when we pull comps. So style, location. So those 2 are the biggest ones. So if I'm appraising a house within a city, I'm not going to pull comps that are located in that city's suburban or rural areas. I'm going to focus on those urban areas. So city of Neenah, for instance, I'll pull comps from the city of Neenah. There might even be particular neighborhoods that I feel are different than others. So I will make sure that I stick within similar neighborhoods. So similar market appeal. And I always stick with the same style. So if I'm appraising a ranch, I'm going to use ranch comparables. If I'm appraising a Cape Cod, on MLS, you can select 1.5 and 2-story. And I do consider 1.5 and 2-story properties within those search parameters. I include everything, that both of those when I'm appraising, 1.5 or 2-story. I think they're very similar. You have staircases, you're going to pick something with similar gross living area. And again, I'm going to concentrate on sales that sold within 12 months. If I have to expand my search, I can go further back and then apply that time adjustment. with today's market, there's even time adjustments that I'll make if property sold even 6 months past my effective date. So sale prices have been increasing, every 6 months. So I'll apply that percentage as well. So again, just location, style, and gross living area are the biggest. Then you kind of filter down condition, bedroom, bathroom count, garage size, everything like that. If I'm in a rural area, that's where I'm going to expand my search. Obviously there's not going to be as many sales within, a smaller township. So I'm going to take similar townships, similar in size, similar in proximity to, if I'm appraising something in, town of, like Ellington, for instance, I will take town of Hortonia, Ellington, Liberty. I'll kind of, even Dale, I'll kind of expand my search to surrounding townships that are similar proximity to Hortonville, Greenville, Appleton. As far as adjustments go, going back, first of all, for the location, that's another requirement that has changed. A lot of appraisals would need to stick within, a mile range. A lot of lenders do like to see comps within a mile. Some of your rural areas, you're not going to be able to find, you might not be able to find comparables in that search parameter. So lenders have loosened their guidelines on proximity of comps. Adjustments. So we're trained to analyze sale data, right? And determine adjustments. That's going to be a range. So basically our job is to analyze buyers' reactions within the market. So it's our job to kind of take, okay, let's take a bunch of 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch styles within the city of Neenah. Let's analyze those differences. So we're going to put in our search parameters and say, we'll have our criteria be 3-bedroom ranch style. Now we're going to get a list of comps, and it's how we extract our adjustments is we're going to analyze, okay, well, what sold between, that 200, 250 range? What sold between that 250, 300 range and 300, 350 range? And I'm just, those groupings are just for example, right? And we're going to see what those differences are. We're going to say, well, okay, well, if one house sold for 250 and another sold for 260, what's that $10,000 difference? Is there more finished basement area in one house? Is there an additional garage stall? So that's how we kind of extract our adjustments. I know that there were a lot of questions on what do I use for those adjustments? What are those adjustments? So, the difference between a full bath and a half bath. Typically, so each market's going to be really different. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to say, it's, a $2,000 difference for every property, but I can kind of give you like a range. So, your full bathrooms versus half bathrooms, what we do is we figure out that contributory value. A full bath might add, anywhere between 5,000 and 18,000 for a bath. But again, depending on your house, your $200,000 house is going to have a smaller added value for a full bath than a $1 million home, right? So there's differences there. But typically, if it's going to be within a $300,000 price range, we're seeing a couple $1,000 difference between a full bath and a half bath. Gross living area adjustments. So again, everything above grade versus finished basement area adjustments. I have always found that finished basement area is at a lower value per square foot than above grade. So, you know, when you see a sale price per square foot, you want to make sure that that finished basement area is not included in that price per square foot, because that's gonna skew the numbers a little bit. So again, anything above grade is a higher value than below grade. 1 car versus 2 car, again, there's a big range. It depends on what type of property. You know, your older homes, you're going to expect more 1-car garages. Your newer homes, you're not going to see a lot of 1-car garages, so your garage stalls are going to, you know, add more value. So again, that could range from $4,000 a stall all the way up to $20,000 a stall. So there's a wide range on that as well. Some people had asked questions on updates. So what, you know, how do I adjust for updates? So that goes back kind of how I was explaining adjustments are derived. You know, when you've got a range of homes that you're analyzing within a similar area, similar style, you know, what's the reason for that, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 adjustment? And you'll be able to say, well, okay, well, updated homes are selling between $250 and $300, and homes that are well kept, minimal updates are between $225 and, you know, $250. So we kind of analyze that data to determine that those condition differences and those adjustments. Outbuildings, sheds, anything like that, I typically apply a price per square foot. So I think I find value depending on the size. So that's how I apply my values on some of my rural properties. Obviously, an outbuilding with, you know, 20-foot ceilings that are heated, concrete floor, steel siding and roof is going to be more valuable at a higher value than a wood shed, you know, that has maybe a sliding door or maybe just a regular service door. So so all that kind of depends on the property, the condition, and your market. Let's see. Then going back to some, those are most of the questions that I had ahead of time. Just going to kind of comb through. Let's say if I'm appraising a house, there was a note on here that regarding repairs. If I'm appraising a house that I find is, you know, a C3, it's been well maintained, it's been, you know, some portions have been updated, but let's say there's, you know, missing trim, missing doors, missing flooring in a particular room if they're under remodel. We estimate what's called the estimated cost to cure. So we estimate the amount of money that it's going to cost to bring those finished materials up to what's considered typical. So that's kind of how we adjust for any repairs that are needed, is that estimated cost to cure. So these are obtained. We make phone calls to contractors. There's we've got Marshall and Swift handbooks that give us, you know, that typical price for flooring per square foot, that kind of thing. So we've got multiple resources to use for determining those adjustments.
Is there anything in particular that you would call out? For example, roof or foundation or something else, like on a conventional appraisal, that you would call it out on an appraisal?
Yeah, so conventional financing is a lot more laid back than your FHA, but it's still my job to disclose anything that I see is apparent as a defect, right? So if I'm gonna see curling shingles, missing shingles, I'm gonna take pictures and I'm gonna just make note of it, right? I'm not a qualified roof inspector, so, or contractor, so I'm unable to say for sure, but I have to disclose everything I find. Same with foundation, cracks in the foundation. Take pictures and I just make note. If there's bowing in the foundation, if there's seepage, lenders need to know all of those details and what we would consider typical. So I see a lot of cracks in a lot of foundations. If I think they're hairline cracks without any bowing, there's no evidence of leaking, I'll ask the seller, the homeowner, questions about it too. Like, hey, have you ever gotten this inspected? Have you had water problems? Have you had any repairs done? That kind of thing, to help provide as much information as possible to the lender. So I have to disclose everything, things that I find, but it's then up to the lender if they're going to require a professional to get that inspected before they move further with the loan. Does that make sense? Perfect. All right.
Then one other question here,
Yeah.
because if appraisal comes in low, there's the opportunity to rebuttal the appraisal.
Yes.
So how does it look? You know, because obviously we get as a lender, we find out, we let the realtor know and then share the appraisal with them so they can look at it, see what comps that they can provide us to contest it. And for example, I put together and prepare a statement with two different comparables that perhaps you didn't use in your appraisal. So I send that into my side. What does it look like from your side then?
Yep. So there's a formal rebuttal form that borrowers can fill out. Real estate agents, can help. That gets forwarded directly to me. Then the lender says, Melissa, please, or whoever, right? Please see this rebuttal form. Can you please address everything in it? So within my appraisal report, the lender requires me to read through everything and address why I did not use a particular comparable, or let's say there was an error in, like, if I missed a bathroom, or and these are just things that they could come back on, right? So it's not always value, but it's most of the time it's comps and value. But there could be other things too that appraisers miss. So it's our job to comb through that rebuttal and line by line. So if there's 3 things on it, we number them 1 through 3, and we make sure we disclose, okay, comp 1 provided is a different style in a neighborhood that I don't consider comparable. So therefore I've considered it, but I don't feel it's necessary to add into the report. So I have to go through that and explain my rationale for not using that particular comp. Or if I think it's a good comparable and I decided, well, the 4 comparables that I already have in the report are more comparable, then it's up to the appraiser. Maybe the appraiser will add it as a 5th or 6th comp and just not give it as much weight. So yeah, but all those are welcome, like we're all in this industry together. So if there's any, if there is something that, an appraiser missed or didn't consider, then it's okay to go back and reanalyze everything. So all right, I will start kind of going through these chat messages as long as there's no other questions. So the first one was, I was wondering if there's a standard on how appraisers rate a house between C5 and C4. There is a standard, again, that UAD standard that appraisers have access to, this published, standardization of, okay, it's basically a description. So, appraisers know, okay, well, C4, right? So this is coming right from the UAD book provided. So C4 is the improvements feature some minor deferred maintenance and physical deterioration due to normal wear and tear. The dwelling has been adequately maintained and requires only minimal repairs to building components, mechanical systems, and cosmetic repairs. All major building components have been adequately maintained and are functionally adequate. So that's a rating that, if there's minimal updates, if it's, in decent shape, but there might be some minor, if there's, some flooring or some minor cosmetic repairs needed, then that would be a C4. C5 is more, it requires a little more than just cosmetic repairs. This kind of explains, the C5 description explains the improvements feature obvious deferred maintenance and are in need of significant repairs. So that's kind of the biggest difference between C4 and C5 is the amount of repairs needed. Some building components need repairs and rehab or updating. The functional utility and overall livability is somewhat diminished due to that condition. So those are the main differences there. Oh yeah.
So I've seen houses that are way worse that our appraises them at a C4, and then there's some houses that are like better and they get appraised at C5. So I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there.
I showed a house in Manitowoc that was basically it was a gut job, but the appraiser appraised it at a C4. And then I currently listed a house in Clintonville, and the appraiser appraised it as a C5, and I'm like, well, the one in Manitowoc was not livable. They had to gut the whole thing, redo everything, but it rated as a C4. And then the one that was in Clintonville, the owner still lived there and everything, and for some reason they rated it as a C5. I'm like, I didn't understand what happened there.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously each appraiser, it is up to them on how they would want to classify it, but that's where these standardized, the UAD wanted to try to help narrow that in. So C4 with what you're saying, a total gut job, if it's cosmetic and doesn't affect the livability of it, I could see that maybe being classified as a C4. But if it needed significant repairs, if things weren't, functioning the way, if it's plumbing, furnace, if roof was leaking, that kind of thing, then I would lean more towards C5. So again, that's my personal opinion after reading through their data set, their guidelines. So I guess I'm just, it does depend on, the appraiser's opinion on that. You would hope that no matter what the condition rating, that they're valuing the property accordingly as well, right? And picking comps that are truly similar in condition and updates or repairs needed.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Do pools have value? So above ground pools are considered personal property, no matter how large and obnoxious they are. So we cannot value them. In-ground pools, I have found do add value. And that obviously ranges on size, and kind of your market too, right? You don't see a lot of homes built in the 1900s with a smaller lot with a pool. You'll find those in more higher end, higher quality homes. So obviously the higher end, the larger the pool, they'll add more value. But I do find value in in-ground pools. Yep. How far do you extend your area if needed for comps? In Green Bay, for instance, do you stay as specific as northwest or southwest? So with each particular area, you have to figure out what are buyers looking at? Is the northwest more desirable? Are median sale prices higher? Are homes newer? Are subdivisions being built up? So kind of analyze it that way. Is a different section older? It's more developed, a more stable neighborhood, or established, I should say, not stable. So it kind of all depends. I'm not afraid to extend my search if I know, even if it's, even 10 miles away, if I know that it's a similar rural township, for instance. Within the city limits, there's certain cities that some pockets are different than others, so city of Appleton, for instance, I'll only pull comps, I'll stay, if I'm appraising a house north of the river, I'll stay north of the river for comps. And south of the river, vice versa. If I'm on Doty Island, I'm going to stay on Doty Island. So there's different neighborhoods, again, where it kind of depends, but I do, your rural areas, I won't be afraid to expand my search, because I want to make sure I'm getting a truly comparable property. Something within a mile might be in a completely different, if it's a rural subdivision, or, it might just be completely different. So how does the real estate market analysis differ from an appraisal report? Again, appraisers are pulling the best comps, just like real estate agents are on their market analysis. There shouldn't be much of a difference in my mind. My appraised value should be very similar to a market analysis. I'm actually a real estate agent as well. So when I put my market analysis together, I use the same criteria in selecting my comps as I would doing an appraisal report. I guess the main differences is, in my adjustments, in my classifications, I know I won't apply a price per square foot. I go through and adjust for all the differences, because that's just kind of the way I'm trained to do it. So I'll take 3 to 5 comps, and I'll, instead of just looking at those 3 to 5 comps as sale price to gross living area or finished area, I will go through those 5 comps and say, okay, what are my differences in bedroom, bathroom, garage, and I'll make those necessary adjustments. But I know in the market analysis that happens too. So again, not huge differences there. That should be relatively similar. So what documentation, such as updates to home, can the seller provide to help an appraiser value their home better? When I walk into a house for an appraisal, the first thing I do is ask them what kind of updates and even repairs that they made. So and the year that they did it, if they have a timeline, because that varies too. If they replaced the roof 30 years ago, I'm not going to consider that an updated roof as value added as if they just replaced, compared to a roof that was just replaced within the last 5 years. So honestly, just a simple list. We don't have anything formal that they can provide to us. Maybe some appraisers will prefer, actual receipts on those things, but I'm there to physically view the home, and I can most of the time tell whether or not those items were replaced or not. So then how do you appraise a home that was built brand new for a homeowner in the rural area? So there's 3 approaches to value in an appraisal. There's a sales comparison approach where I'm pulling comps, analyzing that data. There's a cost approach where I'm basing the value based on industry standards that Marshall and Swift publishes every quarter. And there's the income approach. So for something like this, a single family home built in a rural area, I'll consider the sales comparison approach and the cost approach. The cost approach, I go through, determine land value. So what are vacant lots selling for? And I'll add that land value to the cost of the home that's being built. So I get provided with blueprints and plans and specs directly from the builder. And then I take that information and I look up in my Marshall and Swift handbook, there's different quality ratings. So there's average, above average, there's our average, good, very good, and excellent. So it's up to me, in my opinion, on quality of materials going through on what I think is going to be most comparable for the per the Marshall and Swift good classification, or very good or excellent. So in that Marshall and Swift, it gives me a price per square foot that I apply to, again, above grade, so gross living area. Then it gives me finished basement area. So if any finished basement's being added, it gives me an industry and standard on, or an industry average on price per square foot for that. I can add in fireplaces, staircases from the basement into the garage, walkout entrances. So there's itemized items that I can add into that cost as well. So essentially just comb through the house and create that cost approach. And then if there haven't been a lot of sales in rural areas of brand new construction homes, which typically there aren't, because those are more custom built and aren't spec homes, then I can put most weight on that cost approach. But I still have to develop that sales comparison approach. So I'm still going to have to pull comps and just use older comparable sales and apply a age adjustment and add value to that those comps due to age. So should a homeowner get an appraisal before they put their home on the market? Could it hurt the homeowner? I actually have been hired several times to complete appraisals ahead of time before they list to determine a list price, especially if it's something a little more unique. So I don't think that hurts. I think, it's up to that homeowner if they want to even provide that appraisal to, prospective buyers and show it, so that, it's up to the homeowner. But I think it does give a good opinion, especially on those more unique circumstances. But again, real estate agents do a phenomenal job with their comparative market analysis too, showing comps and providing that information too. So yeah, it could be recommended if comps are limited. That's where I would probably recommend it the most, is if comparable sales are really limited and sale prices are maybe all over the board and there's a pretty big range in prices.
I know you said that you're not FHA
Yeah.
or VA, but if an appraiser does that and does it stick with the house then, or does it have to be recorded?
Does what stick with the house? I'm sorry.
The appraiser, when it comes out, you appraise it. If
Yeah.
they are doing a VA and they're trying to, do a VA or FHA, does that pre-appraisal stick with the house because they are certified? Or does it have to be recorded, or is it just for information purposes only?
So if an appraiser comes out, let's say it's for a sale, for instance, is that kind of what, or are you thinking more if they do it ahead of time? Sale?
A sale. Mhm.
Yep.
To
So
list it.
if an FHA appraiser comes out and appraises a property for the lender holds that in their file, right? And but the lenders are going to have what's like an appraiser roster, and they're going to be able to select other appraisers that are FHA certified in this instance to appraise that house, even in let's say in a year they want to refinance, or in a year it sells again, or 2 years or 10 years, whatever time frame. Depending on the lender, each lender will have their own set of approved appraisers. So whether it's FHA appraiser or not, the lender will be in charge of hiring that appraiser to complete the appraisal on that home. So the appraisal can't necessarily stick with the home because it's in like a sale transaction. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question okay?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, perfect. What determines using the sales comparison over the, okay, so this one, yeah, I touched base on earlier. So, you know, it is up to the appraiser if they're going to want to use the, you know, what they want to consider, what approaches to value. Sales comparison approach is going to always be required for loan transactions for single family residents. Most lenders also require the cost approach for new construction. Anything built, let's say it was built a year ago, it's not necessarily a requirement, but it's up to the appraiser if they feel like that approach should be developed and given weight. So typically, like me personally, I will do the cost approach even up to like 3 years. If a house is up to 3 years old, I'll still do the cost approach. You start to get, you know, as you start to get older in age, you know, things change, layouts change, you know, the industry standards change. So, and I think buyers' reactions, you know, when they're buying a house that's a few years old, they're not going to go through it and say, and, you know, consider as the cost to build it as high, if that makes sense. So it's still being considered. It should still be considered, but it's up to the appraiser if they think it's worth using it or not. Do I give more weight to price per square foot, or is that a secondary metric? Yeah, so again, my price per square foot, you know, me personally, I you know, may use it as kind of a guide, but I really don't put a lot of weight on price per square foot. Again, I go through all the sale prices and I apply the necessary adjustments and get an adjusted value and determine market value that way. How do you decide when to adjust for condition versus quality? So condition is going to be what kind of shape is everything in? Is there holes in the drywall? Is there, you know, holes in the door? Is there torn carpet? Those types of things. Quality is going to be what kind of quality materials are throughout. Do I have brick and, you know, that's LP Smart siding on the exterior, stone, that kind of thing, or do I have wood siding? Do I have 9-foot ceiling heights? Do I have 2-story ceiling heights, vaulted ceilings, coffered ceilings, archways? Those things are more quality based, and condition is more what kind of shape. How well kept is it? Is it normal wear and tear, or is it time to be needing to be replaced or updated? Does the bedroom have to have a heat source? It does. It needs to have a direct heat source, yes. For bedroom qualifications, if the room is in the basement without a window, but basement has a walkout, so that we covered. So as long as the bedroom is not, as long as the bedroom's not a walk-through room, then it can be classified with that as a bedroom with that walkout. Roughly how much value would you add when a detached 1-car garage has been torn down and a new garage has been rebuilt? So this one, again, that's a really good question. So this comes down to the usability of it too. So I guess it depends. Was that 1-car garage, the old 1-car garage, still usable? Or did it just have peeling paint and you know, look not as appealing? That's going to make a smaller difference than if the garage was completely unusable, you couldn't park a vehicle in it. So it just kind of comes down to use at that point.
Melissa, the garage was usable. It just needed maybe new siding, but it was usable. The appraiser on this specific transaction really didn't put a whole lot of value, and she put $55,000 garage up. So I was surprised.
Okay.
So I was just wanting, and it's probably perspective, I'm sure but I'm just curious on what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I have noticed too that there's not as big of a difference in it being brand new, sticking 50,000 into it versus something that's completely usable. But again, same materials, you know, with all things considered, like if the siding was similar, it's just like replacing vinyl siding with vinyl siding. If it's relatively in similar quality and use, there's not going to be that big of a value added, right?
Okay.
A lot of times too, you know, you spend a lot on like labor putting these things, you're changing these things. So that's hard to quantify as well. When a buyer is going to come through, they're going to be like, oh, this is great, right? They're going to definitely appreciate that and understand, like, yeah, okay, I can fit my car in here, and it's, you know, it's low maintenance, it's new, I'm not gonna have to stick money into it. You know, they're gonna find value added in that more than a garage that they wouldn't be able to use, or they are able to use, but maybe have to stick money into it. So they might be more apt, and same with an appraiser, to consider the cost to maybe bringing that old garage up, you know, getting it windows redone, siding, roof if that's rough. So
Okay.
yeah. Oh, thank you, Tom, for putting that ANSI link in there. Do appraisers go off some CMAs? How come one appraiser appraises a home low and another appraises it high? So this is kind of similar. First of all, I've never been provided a CMA. An agent has never given that to me. They'll give me maybe some comps, but not the actual market analysis. Each appraiser is trained. We all go through the same amount of training, same classes that are required. You know, you've got now continuing education that, you know, will vary. There's different classes you can take. An appraiser needs to analyze, you know, comparable sales, just like real estate agents would, but it is ultimately up to them on what they find and how they calculate their adjustments. So there is going to be a little bit of a difference. Another thing is, as an appraiser, we're analyzing buyers' reactions and perceptions within the market. 10, 15 people could come walking through the same house and want to offer a different price, a different purchase price, you know, so that will vary, right? So that's one thing to consider, is there's going to be a range. There's no exact science, there's no exact mathematical equation to finding exactly what one bedroom adds, how much, you know, a bedroom adds in value, or a bathroom, or garage, for instance. So this data set, this UAD, was hoping to kind of dial in some of those differences in how appraisers kind of classify homes, and therefore pull comps as well. But unfortunately, I don't know, I don't have a better answer to explain why some are lower than others, other than, you know, as a real estate agent, if you want to comb through the comparables that the appraiser used, and make sure that they're truly comparable in, again, style, condition. Some appraisals I look at, they don't reflect the same condition, and there's no adjustment for it. That's actually been the biggest thing I see. So just making sure that you know, there aren't better comparables to use to prove a higher value. So we can all work together, borrower, real estate agent, lenders, appraisers, we can all work together and trying to get, you know, communicate and make sure we're getting the best comparables for the home. What is the minimum bedroom square feet? Again, that's per Fannie and Freddie, that's 70 square feet. If ceilings are below 7 feet, do you count finished square? If are below 7 feet, do you count as finished? Yes, but it has to be above 5. So 5 feet is that minimum square footage. Anything 5 feet and higher are counted as finished square footage. So that's finished basement area, finished area above grade. If it has the 5 foot or higher ceiling height, and at some point in the room they have that 7 foot ceiling height as well, then that's all included in finished area.
Didn't that change a few years ago? I was told there was a little bit of panic in my brokerage at the time that, oh, you better be measuring, because if it's 6 feet 10, you're not gonna be able to count that as finished square footage. But I've never seen anyone go by it. So I'm like, I've had buyers that have asked, okay, my ceiling is below 7 feet in the basement. Well, I don't want to say, yeah, Mr. Buyer, go ahead and finish it. It's going to be counted if it's not. That was kind of my concern. But 5 feet is the minimum then. So
five feet is the minimum. Yep. Yep.
Perfect.
But then above grade, so again, going up to that second floor Cape Cod, above grade, at least half of the area needs to be 7 feet tall.
Okay.
So I've been in Cape Cods where literally the ceiling height has come to a point, and from that point down to the floor is less than 7 feet. I could not count that as gross living area, but it doesn't mean that I couldn't add that value to the property. I just, as an appraiser, have to separate it. And if I think it adds value, I have to add value for it in a different line item than gross living area line item.
Thank you.
Yep. And ANSI was implemented. That is recent. Appraisers are now required to use ANSI standards for determining that finished area. Yep. Can an appraiser, oh, my little mouse here. Can an appraiser?
You already answered it.
Yep. Okay, perfect. I had some mouse issues here. Is there anything that we as agents can provide that actually supports value? Yeah, so if you want to provide comparable sales, put them on the counter of the houses, email them to the appraisers, make phone calls, you're more than welcome to do that. I mean, some appraisers might look at that as, you know, an insult. I don't. I'm going to do my due diligence, and I know I'm going to search high and low for the best comps. If agents or anybody else wants to provide me with comps, I welcome them. A list of updates is always something that is really nice too. Not all municipalities require permits for updates to be made. So a lot of times, public records aren't going to have those upgrades and repairs on file. So all that is great information that you want to provide. Photos, I don't know if that's as important, just because appraisers do go through the home and physically view it and take their own photos, but you're more than welcome to share whatever you'd like. Does the completed appraisal get tied into the property? Okay, so for any length of time. So again, this is dependent on the lender. So the lenders are in charge of, if it's for a refinance or a purchase, the lender has their regulations on how long before an appraisal they would need an appraisal update, or just an altogether new appraisal. So Tom, you could probably provide more insight on that. So I've heard typically 6 months, if an appraisal was done within 6 months, or is it a year that you guys will use that same appraisal?
Yeah, typically around that 6-month period.
Okay. Yep. And that's what yep. So then again, if if it's gonna sell and, let's say someone refinances today, but they're gonna sell their house, within 6 months, well, that purchaser is gonna have their own lender pull their own appraisal. They can't use the appraisal done for Tom. Let's say if they refinanced with Tom, they can't use that appraisal. It does not follow the house for their transaction.
And depending upon the product or program, it can be 90 to 120. But like FHA, for example, can be 180. So it depends upon the product or program the client is pursuing on how long that appraisal could be good for.
Do appraisers have access to documents in MLS? Yes, we do. Yep. Our MLS access is the exact same as real estate agents. We can go into showing time, schedule appraisals through showing time. We can access all the documents. We can access the history and anything like that. So do appraisers get offended if you question the appraisal report? So, I mean, each appraiser is different, right? And I feel like it's the way you go about it. If you do have a question, there's, in my experience, if I have someone calling me, asking me questions, I would never get offended. But if they're gonna call and immediately start insulting me and saying I didn't do my job, well, of course, right? Like anyone's gonna kind of put up a defense. There just needs to be good support for their reasoning, right? So, appraisers, we go through a lot of training and a lot of time combing through data and analyzing a lot of information. So the more information we get, the better. So if we do miss something, share it. Don't hesitate. We're just, we just don't want to listen to, all the negativity if there's no support behind it, if that helps, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The reason I asked is because I had an appraisal done and I called the appraiser and I was like, there's some stuff on your appraisal report that I'd like to talk about. If you give me a call back, and never called me back. So I emailed them, never emailed me back. So I was like, okay.
Oh.
I don't think appraisers like me contacting them, so I didn't know.
Well, so here's another thing so we are not allowed to talk about the appraisal report, like if it's for a lender, for instance. We are actually for anyone. So our client in a purchase transaction or refinance is our lender. We cannot discuss value with anyone except the lender. We can't talk to the borrower. We can't talk to the real estate agent. So there is that, right? So he can't call you and talk about value, not unless you get written permission from the client. If it's something regarding the house, like, hey, you missed this finished room in the basement, or you missed a half bath in the report, that's something that's fine to talk about, like facts, about the house. Unfortunately, we just can't talk value. So that's probably the reason why you didn't get a phone call back, is because we literally can't discuss value. The best way to do that is contact the lender, because the borrower can fill out that. So the borrower or the real estate agent, Tom, that rebuttal, real estate agents can provide you with information too, correct? So that can be filled out, provided to the lender, then the lender can communicate that to the appraiser. So that would be the best way to go about trying to get a hold of the appraiser versus directly. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm guessing the reason why you wanted to have a conversation with the appraiser, was it obviously some discrepancy in appraisal, but did that lead to a lower than anticipated value?
It was a lower than anticipated value. It was let's see, the kitchen was a carpeted kitchen, but the appraiser said that the kitchen didn't have any flooring, and then she said that the bathrooms didn't have a light switch at all in any of the bathrooms, and I was like, yeah, there's light switches in the bathrooms, you know. So I just wanted to let her know that, it's a carpeted kitchen and the bathrooms do have light switches, but yeah.
Yeah, like that. I mean, again, you could go through the lender with that as well and just ask for that to be considered and into the report and just have it formally in writing and done, the right way.
And
Again,
if someone gave that information to me, I'd bubble it up to my manager and have them go through appraisal management to question the appraiser on it. Maybe did you get the most revised copy of the appraisal? Was it updated at all or?
It was the most revised one. I did
Okay.
go to the lender. I did go to the lender for that, and the lender didn't seem like they wanted to help out much at all.
Okay.
We ended up going to a different lender and getting the house reappraised, but this is why I had questions, because this appraiser appraised the house at a C5, and then the new appraiser appraised it at a C4, and the old appraisal report came like way below value, and the new appraisal report, from what I was told, it came at value with significance, like higher. I'm assuming it was higher. It was appraised higher, so it just really confused me. Yeah.
Yeah, and once an appraiser submits, their report, a lot of times the lender they'll keep working with that same appraiser in making sure questions are answered and the value is, or just items are accurately reported, right? Not necessarily value. I don't know how that would differ that much. So without reviewing the reports, that's tough. So, but yeah, communicating with the lender is the best way to go. And it sounded like you did that. So sorry to hear that wasn't a very good experience for you.
Oh no, all good. I just
Yeah.
it really just confused me, because I was just like, one appraiser appraised it basically, was it 20 below value?
Okay.
Then
Wow.
the next one appraised it at value with significance. So I'm assuming it was way above value when they appraised it. So
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't understand. And then I talked to the original lender, and the original lender was like, well, there's nothing we can do. No, they were like, no lenders are gonna approve this house, period. So they didn't want to help out that
Oh,
much. So I was like, okay. So we ended up
okay.
using a different lender that, yeah, everything went through fine. But
Huh. Yeah, maybe it was, yeah, each lender, I'm sure, has different, I don't even know how differ the criteria is between lenders. Tom, you could.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's even the lender thing. It's because it's if they feel it's a quality appraisal, it's hard to throw it out and say we can get a new one, because you
Yeah.
just can't do that to get a value you want from a
Yeah.
lender perspective. So that's the
Right.
issue, is that lender's hands might have been tied based upon that appraisal that came in, because they feel it's still a good valid appraisal to use. So they just can't, unless they can find some valid reason to throw it out, they just can't do that. So that might have been the issue for that particular lender. So unfortunately, maybe their hands are tied because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
all right. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. All right. Well, I think that's everything that I have. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on this a little bit by some of the questions.
Mhm.
But one question I do have: any tips to our realtor partners on here that to help them out, to help you out, make your job easier, whether it's during the appraisal or before the appraisal, that you would appreciate that they could do for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that in the notes there. So, any list of updates, repairs made with the year or like an estimated time frame that was those updates, repairs were completed really helps. And again, if, if agents wanted to provide comps, they can, they, don't necessarily have to, because appraisers need to do their due diligence and choose their own comps anyways. So, yeah.
Your, obviously, it'll vary based on appraiser to appraiser, but your opinion on a realtor or listing agent attending the appraisal?
Oh, I have no preference. I don't know. I mean, most appraisers, I don't think mind either. It, most agents do not meet us at the home though. So it's not too common for that to happen. So I know some appraisers really, when we're going through houses, we have to make sure we're taking as many notes as possible and making sure we really look up around, all around, and really do a good job in viewing the house. So, as long as they're doing that and, getting their job done, then it doesn't matter who attends the appraisal. So, yeah.
I
Awesome,
would
thank
actually
you.
love to shadow you for an appraisal just to see what you do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that would be honestly just fine. I can we can arrange that at any time. So do you have
Right.
my contact information?
Tom, can you give that to me, Tom?
Yeah, I'll get it to you, and then I'll also be sending out an email here. So then we'll get that over to you.
Yeah.
All right, so
And
good.
I'll
Yeah, if you don't
CC.
mind providing my phone number and email address for anyone that needs to reach out at any time, that would be really greatly appreciated.